Welcome friends and learners to this live TC session on the topic sampling in research. I am Dr. Ajith Kumar from School of Education IGNOU. This session is basically aiming at the learners who have enrolled in the postgraduate diploma in higher education program. In that program, there is a course which is about the research. The learners are expected to undertake a research work, a miniature research works, and that's why we call it as a project work. So you have to select a research project and you have to carry out the activities, and finally you have to submit the project report. So when you undertake any research work or project work, it usually follows the steps which are there in the research work. We have already done couple of sessions in which I have given the idea about what is a research problem, then what is a hypothesis, the different types of research work that you can undertake when you select a particular research topic. Now, in continuation to that discussions, in this particular session we will be focusing on one of the very important aspects, which is the selection of samples for your research work, the sampling in research. We have discussed that research is a scientific kind of a work to find out solution to any particular problem. And if you see the steps in research, at some point you will also find this step, which is about the sampling. So let us see what actually it is about, what is sampling, how you will select the samples which are required for your research project. So basically we will be talking about sampling, the idea, the concept of sampling. Then the major focus will be on the different types of sampling, which would help then you to select a particular kind of a sampling method when you work on a research project. So this is how the session is planned: topics, ideas about the sampling, then the major types of. So to start with, I would request your attention to the screen where it is written that the sampling is a kind of a selection of units or members from a sampling frame. So in the beginning we will have a research project, research title. Then we will move on developing the tools which are required for collecting the data. Now where you will collect the data? If you have a tool on, say for example, a very simple kind of a variable like intelligence or creativity, how you will get the data for the creativity or intelligence? You have to go to the field, collect the data from the respondents. So basically you will be having a sampling frame, some numbers, say for example if it is a school student, some 500 students or 1000 students. So that is going to be your, maybe we can say, population or sample, population or the entire respondents. Out of that, how you will select the required number of units, members, to whom you will be applying the research tool. To that selected samples or units or members, you will be giving the tools, and they will be giving you the data required for your research work. So sampling basically refers to that, the selection of the units or the members or the samples from your sampling frame. Now when we talk about the sampling methods or sampling in general, you will come across something like a population and sample. So basically population is nothing but the group of individuals that has one or more characteristics in common and that are of interest to the research. Or you can also see some kind of a definition like a group of individuals with at least one common characteristics which distinguishes that group from other individuals. So basically this will be a group of individuals which have some common characteristics. Say for example, if you are planning to research on 10th class students, so the 10th class students will be having some characteristics in common, age wise, yeah, some other characteristics. If you are working on the students or the learners who are learning, attending, or who have enrolled for the bachelor's degree program, any bachelor's degree, if it is chemistry, bachelor of science in chemistry, first year students, so first year students will have some characteristics in common. Likewise, BA economics third year students, they will have some common characteristics. So that group of individuals, we call it as population. Now this is going to be the population of your study. So in the beginning, in your research work, you will have the population. Now see, it is going to be very difficult for you to work on or to collect data from the entire population. Say for example, give you a simple example, like if you are researching on the school students in the country, it's going to be a big number, crores of students are school students. Similarly, higher education students comes something in lakhs. So you cannot collect data from the entire, what we say, the lakhs of students or crores of students. So as a researcher, to work out your research, to get data for your research work, you will select a particular number of students from that particular big group, so called. That group is called, what we see, as you see on the slide, sample. So what is a sample then? A sample is a small proportion of the population that is selected for observation and analysis. So I hope you got an idea about the population. Population is very big in number. They share some common characteristics. Basically, they are a big group, huge number of respondents, or what we say, units or members. And it is going to be difficult to study, collect data from the entire big, huge number of, basket of, what we say, unit or members. So you will go on selecting a particular group of students, units or members from that particular population, and that small proportion, that small group from the population that you have selected from the population is termed to be samples. So it is on samples that you will give your research data collection tools. It can be any data collection tool, and that depends on the type of research work that you undertake. Like we have broadly the quantitative and qualitative studies, then the different kinds of studies like historical, survey, experimental, correlational studies, etc. So in any of the researches, you will have that research tool with you, data collection tool with you, and you will collect data from that small proportion, that small group that you have selected from the entire population. I hope this is clear. So let us move forward then. If you talk about the major question is how you will select the samples from this population, then we have to think of something like some kind of a strategy method has to be there. So we have in research project work, or in general the research studies, there are two types of sampling methods as you see on the screen. One is the probability sampling method, the other is the non-probability sampling method. What is probability sampling method? As the name indicates, each individual, each unit, each member of the population gets equal chance of being selected. That's what probability sampling method is. Each individual or member will have equal chance. So if you have hundreds, the population is 100, which is a very small number that way. So if you are going to select some 10 students from 100 students, each of the 100 students, each of the 100 units, 100 members have equal chance of getting selected. and non-probability is just a reverse of the unit sample selected at the discretion of the researcher. So we don't have to look for any kind of a, what we say, some probability methods to select. Each member doesn't, uh, have the probability that way. So it is up to the researcher whom I should select as a sample for my research work, for my data collection. So that technique is non-probability sampling method. Now, if you see the probability sampling methods, you can see, as you see on the slide, there are different types of probability samplings also, like simple random sampling, systematic, stratified, area or cluster, and multi-stage sampling. These are the major types of probability sampling method. One of the major criteria characteristics is like each of the individual has equal probability. Now let us see in detail what is all these sampling techniques are. Simple random sampling, like see, each member or unit of the population are equal or probable chance of being selected, just like the way we were explaining the probability sampling method. Each individual has equal chance or probable chance. If 100 students will have equal chance of getting, and this is one of the most common method used in the research work. Now we also make use of randomization. If each individual gets equal chance of being selected, then that is called, that technique or that characteristics or criteria is called a randomization. So this is one of the most common method of randomization, also one of the most common method of selecting the samples also. Now how you will select? If you have 100 samples, how you will select? Maybe if you want 10 students, 10 samples from 100, how you will select? One of the common used methods is lottery method. You place the 100 samples, select, pick and choose method, lottery method. The other way is called table random numbers. For each 100 samples, you give some number, from that you select the samples, 10 number of students or 10 units. The next is systematic sampling. As you see on the slide, the units of population in the sample are selected from a list made in alphabetic or some other order. So we will arrange, if 100 is the population, we will arrange the 100 students or 100 respondents in some order, alphabetic order, say for example. Then from that you will select a particular sample first. So if it is ordered in alphabetic order, you will first select the 5th student, then you will select the 10th student, 15th student. So if you want to have that kind of a selection, then as you see on the slide, we use a small statistical formula like F is equal to N by Sn. F is the frequent interval, N is the total number of population, and Sn is the required number of sample. If it is 100 divided by 10, you will get F. So this is the technique we use in systematic sampling. The next is stratified random sampling. As you see, collects a random selection of sample from within certain strata or subgroups within the population. So we say, for example, if you work on the school students of 10th class, we group them based on their gender, like male into one group, female into another group. Then from that group you select. If 100 is the population, 50 males, 50 females. From that 50-50 you select the samples. When you are selecting 10 students from the 50 male group, 5 you will select, and for that you will make use of again the simple random sampling method. So in general, that the sampling technique will be stratified random. By that we mean we will group them based on some characteristics like rural, urban, married, unmarried, educated, uneducated, based on the parental qualification. We can have different types of students studying in first year, second year, third year. So different kinds of strata we can make, and from each strata we will select the required number of samples. So if that is the sampling technique, such a sampling method is called, type is called stratified random sampling. Next is area or cluster sampling. See, sometimes the stratified sampling may be difficult, then we move on to this kind of a sampling technique. you can see when population is too large and geographically scattered, cluster or area sampling is used when population is infinite. Rest of the cases, most of the cases, we have population finite. If it is school students, that way in reality it is crores, but if you are working on school students of a particular school, the number will be finite. Even the other case also, in the other case also, the number is finite. But when the number is infinite, if you are taking a big kind of the whole country or the whole state, sometimes it is not going to be finite that way. So in that case, we will make again like some groups. That groups we call it as clusters. So if it is a state, we will make, if it is Delhi, north a cluster, south a cluster, east, west clusters. Okay. From each cluster, using the random sampling method, we will select the required number of samples. So the basic idea is making groups or clusters, and from each cluster. So this is used when, if your research work involves the population which is infinite and it is geographically scattered. And the last one is multi-stage sampling. As you see, sampling done at different stages which you define as per the objectives of the study. Let me give you a small example. Like if you are working on the IGNOU students, you can have north, west, east region. From there you collect the data, then you go on to the regional centers. You are coming to the next stage of data collection. Regional centers, then you collect data from the study centers, then from the learners. So all these east-west regions is one stage, regional centers is another stage, then it goes on like. So at different stages, you are collecting the data. This is multi-stage sampling. So these are the major types of probability sampling methods. Now let us see some of the non-probability sampling techniques, methods or types of non-probability. I was saying that in non-probability sampling, we don't go by the probability, what we say strategy. Each individual, each member, we will not give equal chance of getting selection. Say for example, if 100 is the population, we will not give any kind of a chance. 100 will be selected. We feel the first, if you sometimes if you organize it in alphabetic order, the first 5 we will select. So then rest of the, if you are deciding to select the first 5, then there is no chance of the other 95 in the population to get selected. So this is purely done on the, what we say, the judgment of the researcher. Various other reasons can play. So that is the basic idea of non-probability sampling. And if you see the non-probability types, sampling types, you will see the major 4 types, like convenient, or sometimes it is called incidental or accidental sampling. Now the next is quota sampling. The third is purposive, or we sometimes call it as judgmental sampling. The next is snowball sampling. So these are the major types of, what we say, the non-probability sampling. We will go into details of these sampling techniques. First, let us see the convenient or incidental sampling. As you are seeing on this slide, see, in convenient sampling, selection of units of population which are incidentally or conveniently available to you. Say for example, somebody is coming to IGNOU, to any of the department for attending a workshop, and you are working on a research project which are based on the samples who are attending that particular workshop. So that samples population is convenient for you, they are available to you. So then you select some of the samples from that particular group. So that kind of a, what we say, selection of samples is called convenient. Even the name itself, it indicates the samples which are convenient for your selection. Next, quota sampling. See this slide, selection of units or population within each stratum based on the judgment of the researcher. Again, here the judgment, in each of the non-probability sampling technique, you will find the researcher's judgment. We don't give any kind of a, what we say, a probability to each of the samples. But here in quota sample, just the way we were doing like strata, we also make quotas. Then from that you will select. Selection of a predetermined number of proportion of units called a quota. This is just similar to stratified sampling. But the difference is in stratified sampling it is probability theory we are making use of. Each individual has equal probability. But in here in non-probability we don't apply the randomization or probability strategies. We organize them into stratas as per your judgment, as per your convenience. From that you will select some samples. So that is quota sampling technique. The next is purposive judgmental sampling. Selection of units based on the purpose objectives of the research. It's purely, you have some specific objectives for your research work, and depending on that you cannot go to the entire population. So you see your research objectives purpose, as the name indicates, purposive, then select. So it relies on the judgment of the researcher to select the unit, like people, cases, organization, any can be studied. If you are working on IGNOU, then absolutely no doubt you have to select that. That is your purpose, you have to study IGNOU, how it is working. So that is purposive or judgmental sampling. The next, friends, snowball sampling, used when the population you want to research is hard to reach, or there is no existing database or other sampling frame to help you find them. See, there are different kinds of examples for that. Say for example, some socially marginalized group like you see on the slide, drug addicts, homeless people, sex workers. So these kinds of what we say population or samples you will not be available at all the places. Like homeless people, some pockets they are available. So you go to that place, select the samples. Drug addicts, very difficult to reach some kind of these kind of samples. Similarly, like the socially marginalized groups. So if you are working on, if your research work is on such kind of special groups which is very difficult to reach or find, then if you are selecting such samples for your research work, then the research type or the sampling type, the sampling type you are making use is known as snowball sampling. So friends, these are the different kinds of non-probability. One more is there, like the volunteer sampling, which we usually see in medical researches and all. See, as you see on the slide, it relies on participants who voluntarily agree to be part of your research work. See, when we were experimenting the coronavirus, that vaccine, some people voluntarily came, and on those people this was tested. So people voluntarily come to give data for your research work. Such kind of a sampling type is called volunteer sampling technique. So these are the major non-probability sampling types. So in each group we have seen 5 types of sampling, in both in non-probability and probability. So with this I would wind up this session. In this session we have, in a brief mode, we have discussed about the sampling. We have started with what is sampling. The population and sample are very integral to this sampling. So we have discussed the idea of population and samples also. Then the major sampling methods that we use in research work, project work, they are probability and non-probability sampling methods. We have discussed that also. And in each of the probability sampling methods, we have different types of sampling. That also we have covered. I hope you have got some information, idea about the sampling in research. I hope you will make use of these kind of ideas when you undertake any research work in your research project, the course MES 105. With this I would wind up. Thank you. Thank you for listening this lecture.
A warm welcome to IGNOU. If you're creative, if you can write well, and if you can visualize, mass communication is the correct career option for you. I am going to talk about postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication, which is